This morning I just want to do a little bit of an introduction to the sermon, but I'm going to give myself a chance to sit down first. A bit of an introduction to the sermon. Today my theme is that being a blessing should be, or is, the most to other people is, okay, let's start this over. Introduction to the sermon. The theme today is that being a blessing to other people should be the most natural thing for us as we live our lives. And I thought that instead of just going right into the sermon, one of the things that we really benefit from at St. Mary's is the music that Marie does. Like we just sang one of her songs. And so what I thought we'd do as a sermon hymn this morning is get her to sing one, or we can all join in, of course, but to sing one that she wrote a lot of years ago now. I have been asking people in the congregation to come up and do the address every now and then. And Mer, being a musician, wrote this song to go along with her address, which was about her story of her journey of faith. So let's do that one. We'll put it up, Richard, and join in. Sometimes when we're a blessing to other people, it's because we've done something or we've intentionally done something to benefit them. An act of kindness, an act of love, an act of caring, an act of sharing. But what I'd like to suggest is that when you're in the right space as a human being and living authentically in that space, very often you're blessing people without even intending to. Now, it's not that you're intending not to be, but that things happen quite serendipitously, and that's what I want to talk about this morning. I'm going to tell you a story that some of you, well, probably most of you know already, but I'm going to evolve it somewhere else, and it's going to turn into a story about someone who has been a blessing to me relatively recently, who I have never met, I do not know, I've never spoken to the person, and probably never will. Okay? But nonetheless, has been a blessing to me. I got to go way back. Last spring, but that's not that far back. Last spring, I guess it was. When did Greg first pick up his guitar and start playing with you on Sundays? Was it spring last year, fall or something? Sometime in the winter. Sometime in the winter. You all know Greg, and he's here most Sundays, the rest of the Sunday, but he gets up with Myrrh, and it's really cool to see. You know, Myrrh's there doing what she does, and he's there with his guitar, and he's just so natural. You know, no affectation about him. He's just so natural. But I remember really, really clearly the first Sunday that Greg got up and played his guitar, and I loved it. Like I loved it. I loved hearing the sound of guitar at St. Mary's again. But at the same time, it was bittersweet, because for those of you that have been around St. Mary's long enough, you'll know that once upon a time, before I started with the drums, I was the one standing up with the guitar. I loved guitar, and when I first came here, I was probably playing guitar 10 to 15 hours a week in church, with youth groups, practices, and Bible studies, and all the rest of that sort of thing. I loved it. And so when Greg got up that Sunday and played a piece of music, I was delighted to hear it, delighted to hear how he and Myrrh were blending together, but at the same time, it's very poignant. Because as you know, I think all of you know, I just can't play guitar anymore. This is where it goes back a long way. Once upon a time, I went to my doctor because my right hand, like I'm left-handed, so when I used to play guitar, strum with this hand, chord with this hand. I went to the doctor because my right hand was feeling funny. It was kind of numbish. And he made a reference, he referred me to a neurologist. And so I went to the neurologist, and he did all sorts of interesting stuff. He stuck pins and needles in me and made me close my eyes and wiggle my fingers, and, which one am I touching? Well, not I'm touching, he's touching. He gave me a grip test. At that point, my grip was really strong. I played guitar for a lot of years, your grip gets strong. And did all sorts of tests. He says, I think basically you've sort of irritated it. There's probably some inflammation there. You might have carpal tunnel, Let's watch and see what happens. Well, we watched and we waited and saw what happened, and the rest of the story, you know that sometime later, it was a couple of years later actually, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And so losing sensation and dexterity in my right hand was the first sign of that for me. Multiple sclerosis, it's a thief. It's a thief. It's a thief that breaks into your house again and again and again, and takes a little bit at a time. For most of us, it takes a little bit at a time. There's never one catastrophic loss, but it comes in, it steals something, and then it comes back, and it steals something again, and steals something again. And sometimes when you wake up, and the thief has been in the night, you don't even know right away what the thief has taken, but there's something missing. Well, the thief took my ability to play guitar. And that was something that I loved. I'd had a bunch of guitars in my life. There's some that I have really nice memories of. When I was in my first student placement in seminary, the guy that I was working with, Bill White, just an amazing man, he thought that I needed a better guitar. He was right. And so he bought me a 12-string Aria. Aria is not the most fantastic guitar in the world, but for me, it was heaven. Now in those days, there weren't very many left-handed guitars in the market, so what I used to do was switch the strings around so that I could play it properly, play it properly for me. So I had my 12-string Aria. Eventually my 12-string Aria died, and there was a succession of guitars. Somebody gave me a Norman B20, left-handed. It was my first official left-handed guitar. And I loved that guitar. It was stolen one Easter Sunday morning out of my office in Montreal North. That one hurt. And then eventually, I bought with the insurance money an Ovation. a left-handed ovation guitar. Some of you may even remember that one from the old days. It was the sort of round back. It looked like it was made of plastic on the back and dark in front. That was a nice guitar. I love the action on that guitar. And then eventually, I figured I needed a 12-string. This isn't too tedious for you. I needed a 12-string. I felt I needed a 12-string. And I couldn't find any left-handed 12-strings on the market, but I was talking to some people at the music store in Montreal, and they were about to be given a tour of a guitar manufacturing facility in Quebec. Robert Godin was the guy who owned it, and he makes Norman guitars and Seagull guitars. And so I went with him on the tour, and even before he was making left-handed 12 strings, I got a left-handed 12-string guitar, and I loved it. I loved it. And I played a lot, and still the ovation. And this was just, it was just a part of it. It took me through my teenage years, took me through my young adult years, and it took me into ministry. There was a time, it might sound more impressive than it is, it wasn't very impressive, but there was a thing called Crossroads Youth Service once a month downtown. At one point I was in charge of music, and there were 300-400 kids there. It was just awesome. I loved it, I loved it, I loved it. And then it got to the point where I just simply couldn't do it anymore. And in fact, the story of the drums is, I really miss music, and married to Marie, I'm surrounded by music, but there's a part of it, when being into music, and Nim would know this, and any musicians here would know this, that when it's going on, you just want to be part of it. And so what happened was, one time we were down at Archambault downtown, and I saw that drum set, and I can't chord, but I can hold drumsticks, especially if they got elastic. And so you have all been absolutely wonderful and incredibly patient with me as I've learned, well, this is 4 or 5 years ago now, but learned to sort of play drums. Well, I don't play drums, I play at drums. But I can be a part of the music, and that means a lot. Well, things have changed, and this is where I want to start talking about serendipitous blessings. There's a radio show that I like to listen to on Saturday evenings. Occasionally, if I'm having a bad night and I'm awake Friday nights, it's replayed on Friday nights. It's called Vinyl Tap. Randy Bachman. Any of you know Randy Bachman? Should we all stand and sing a chorus if you ain't seen nothing yet, or whatever? Randy Bachman, as far as I'm concerned, is one of Canada's musical treasures. Just absolutely. And he just got a star. I think he was on the Walk of Fame. Well deserved. So I was listening to Randy Bachman's show. And I don't know if he ever had a meeting where he sat around with a bunch of people who know about what tone he wanted the show to have. But if you think pretentious at one end and think the exact polar opposite of pretentious, that's what a show is. It's the polar opposite of pretentious. Whenever I'm listening to the show, it's like like I'm sitting on the back deck and had some friends over for a barbecue, and this guy is sitting there. It's like world famous, incredible musician, Canadian, who's sitting there just talking about music and his love for music and all the rest of it. So here's what happened. Sometime, I guess it was late spring, maybe early summer, I was listening to one of his shows, and as he does, sometimes he has a guitar with him, and he just starts playing a riff or something and singing along with it. It's very unedited. As I say, it's like he's sitting on your deck having a barbecue, and he's talking about music, and you can just, in the way he's talking, his love of music and his passion for music comes across. And then he started talking about guitars. Now, I wasn't taking notes. This wasn't a seminar on guitars. But if memory serves, he listed a number of different types of guitar, one or two of which I actually recognized the name and model. But he just was talking about his love of music and his love of guitars. And as I was listening to this, you can guess what happened. If you were to turn on the radio, I don't know if any of you are into scrapbooking, something I couldn't. But if you're listening to a show or watching something on PBS, and you're into scrapbooking, how could you not, go and get all your scrapbooking materials out, just to look at them, to touch them, to feel them, to do something. If you're into beading or jewelry making, and you're at an artisan show, and here's all these artisans doing your beading, your jewelry making, whatever, you gotta be there or come home and get out all your beading stuff. You might say, I could do better than that. And it might be true, maybe not, but it just triggers your passion for the thing. Well, hearing him talk about his passion for music, just the way he was talking about the music, and the way he was talking about guitars, I had to go get my guitar. And my Norman 12-string has been sitting in the closet of my den for quite a while now. Occasionally, I would get it out, and I'd sort of sit down with it, and get a pick, and just try to do something. But because this hand doesn't really work anymore, because of multiple sclerosis, you can imagine that it wasn't exactly a fulfilling, uplifting experience. It would leave me feeling sad and hurt. That's something that I love so much. I just can't do anymore. But on this particular occasion, something funny happened. I went up my Norman, and during the news break between the two halves of the show, I just started messing around with my Norman. But what happened, like, when you're chording, your fingers have to be sort of like that. You know, this isn't even right because of the MS, but they have to be like that. But what I discovered was that my fingers could go flat. So instead of chording, what I was doing was just pressing with the flat of my finger on some of the strings, which gave birth to an idea. So not only did Randy Bachman cause me to go into my den closet and get up my own guitar, he also cost me money. Because, and I'm not going to sue him, because what I realized was, though I can't play a regular acoustic anymore, and unless they come up with some cure for this disease that I have, I probably never will again. What I can do is I can play a bass guitar. You know, a bass with 4 strings, and the strings are wider apart, and it takes a different technique to play a bass. So you know what I did? You know, last week, Mer said at the end of her talk some nice things about me. I could say some nice things about Mer, one of which is she puts up with me. I went on Amazon, and I looked up to see whether there was any such thing available as an acoustic bass, left-handed guitar with a pickup in it so you could plug it into an amp. And what to my wondering eyes should appear, but right there on Amazon, there isn't one. There's any number of acoustic, electric, bass guitars that you can buy. Some of them are simple, some of them really expensive, some of them gorgeous, you know. And so I found this guitar. If you think that the end of this sermon is I'm going to pick it up and start playing it, you're wrong, because I'm not there yet. That's for another time. But I ordered it off of Amazon CD. It's made by Dean. Dean guitars, I guess some of them are good, some of them, this one, like the top of it's so thick that I think you could run over it with a tank and it'd be fine. So I'm not sure about the quality. But when the guitar arrived, of course, I tuned it, sat down, and just started seeing if I could do anything. Now, after a lot of years of not playing, this hand is weak, and it needs to be strengthened. And so ask Annie or Ben about Fred after the service. Fred is my sponge rubber ball with a smiley face that I'm using to get my hand back in shape. But I can do it. And can you imagine, for me, maybe you can because maybe you've had some similar experience in your life, to discover that something that you thought was lost, all of a sudden you do again. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. You know, when, like, we bless lots of things in the church. Some people bless pets. We bless crosses. We bless bread and wine. We bless each other. We say blessing at the end, you know. We bless all sorts of things. But it's a word that we often use without really thinking about what it means. When we bless a cross, what we're doing is dedicating it to God's purposes and praying that it will be a reminder for the person wearing it of God's caring and love for them. That's what a blessing is about. When we bless the bread and wine, when we have the Lord's Supper, communion, whatever jargon you want to use, what we're doing is we're praying God would use those simple elements, simple stuff, everyday stuff when Jesus was alive, bread and wine, and that every time we consume something to nourish us, we'll be reminded of God's love for us, and His care and His protection. When we bless each other with an act of kindness or love, when we hug each other, when we kiss each other, when we exchange a good word, when we gift one another, when we bless each other, what we're doing is we're extending God's love in a relationship. And in so doing, in these ways that I mentioned and so many others, what we're doing is we're enhancing one another's quality of existence. And sometimes we do that intentionally. And sometimes we do it very intentionally. Somebody's going through a rough time, and sometimes what we do is simple but intentional. We bring them a gift, or we bring them a casserole, or we bring them something. Sometimes we're thinking of somebody, and we write them a card, or we pick up the phone and call them up and ask them how they're doing. But sometimes we're a blessing to one another, incidentally, or even accidentally. And when we enter into our humanity, into the fullness of our humanity, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. When we enter into the fullness of our humanity, what we'll discover, often without even knowing that it's happened, is just being fully human and fully who we are can be a blessing to other people and can transform their lives. And the reason why I use this story about the guitar today is because, in one sense, it's so remote. Like, as I say, I've never met Bachman, never spoke to him on the phone. He lives the other, as I understand, the other side of the country. Never even been to a live show, never seen the guy even up on stage. But by being passionately who he is and what he is as he relates to music, by being fully human in that way, his very life and words is a blessing to me. So here's two questions. Intentionally, is there someone intentionally that you could be a blessing to by an act of kindness or caring? Somebody that's on your mind and you just haven't gotten around to it. Or somebody that should be on your mind, but you haven't been intentional about it. But you need to speak to it. Or you need to do an act of kindness or love for it. Or you need to be reconciled with it. Is there someone that intentionally you need to bless? The second thing is, what are the things about you that could be accidental or incidental blessings to other people? How can you, just by virtue of being who you are, be a blessing to someone? What are you good at, in other words? What do you love? What are you passionate about? Because again, part of this story is what triggered me to go and get my guitar wasn't a song or a piece of music. It was a man who obviously loves music and has an incredible wealth of experience and stories and all the rest of it, and a love of guitars, just talking about his love. That was what triggered me to respond and go and get my guitar, and it led me to a different place. So what are the things you love? What are you in your life? And how can that be a blessing to other people? You know, in one sense, this has been more of an address than a sermon. You sort of bring God into it to make it a sermon, otherwise it's an address. And there's nothing wrong with just doing an address. There's nothing wrong with, with the best of being human. But I do want to sort of bring something in. However you view him, however you see his existence in ministry, whether you see him as a good man, a good teacher, a prophet, or whether you see him as the Son of God come into the world, when you look at Jesus in his life, you see someone, amongst other things, who was incredibly passionate about caring for people. That passion came from a desire to bring about God's kingdom. God's kingdom is a place where everybody's a friend, everybody is made whole, and everybody is loved for exactly who they are. And his life and his ministry, however you understand it, is dedicated to accomplishing that. When he fed people, when he taught people, when he healed people, when he just assembled and ate with people, when he attended dinner parties, it was all about that. It was all about making people and causing people to come to a point where they were as fully human, as fully alive as they could possibly be. And we who claim to be followers of Christ, our job description and our mandate is exactly the same thing. So, to repeat, and then I'm going to close. And Mer, you know what? At the end, can we do another song? Maybe the one that you did before, as the gradual. So I think that would be a nice one to finish with too.
I have a good idea.
Okay, well, okay, do your good idea. That's probably better than mine. So, two things, and then I'm going to finish up. One, take a minute sometime today. Don't wait till tomorrow because you'll forget. Or maybe that's just me, but maybe you'll forget too. So do it today. Think of somebody who you need to make contact with. Whether it's by gifting them with something, or a phone call, or a note, a letter, or whatever. Just do something to connect with somebody you're distant from. To be a blessing to them. To make their life better. And the second thing is, take a look at yourself. Do a gift inventory. What do you love? What are you passionate about? What do you care about? And then ask yourself the question, authentically you, how could you be a gift or a blessing to people around you? You'll make the world a better place. Now let's sing a song. Ready? Let's swing it over to her again, buddy.
Blessed
So God's peace be with you and everybody alone. Let's stand and share exchanging the peace, and take a bit of time to do it today.